Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Matt, and this is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit, your beacon of freedom and the American way of life. Tune in every Friday for a new episode as we dive into the world of liberty and what makes our country great. All right, guys, I hope you've all had a great week. Welcome back. This is Eric and Matt here with LLP.
Hello.
All right, we've got a very special podcast here for you today, the first of its type that we've ever done. This is new for 2022. We're going to do an entire episode that is a Q&A format. Now, I went on, just a clarification here, I went over on the old Twitter, and I asked people to field their questions to me so that I could, answer some questions. And just to give you an idea, I said, Matt and I are recording podcast. We'd love to field some of your questions. Anything from firearms, hunting, fishing, self-reliance, etc. Leave me a question and we'll answer it on the air. So that's the general idea. And we're just going to, unscripted, we're just going to go through and start answering questions. What do you think?
It could be a little bit risky, but let's roll the dice.
All right, we're going to roll the dice. Okay. I hope everybody's had a great week, and we are going to dive into this. I would like to take a moment to thank the show's sponsor, Sonoran Desert Institute, SDI. Big thank you to them for supporting LLP. If you're looking for a career in gunsmithing technology, reloading, more of the business end of the firearms industry, they've got a bunch of great distance learning programs, totally great group of instructors, awesome curriculum, really good programs set up by some of the best people in the industry. They got some great financial incentives. Talk to them. Really good people. Sonoran Desert Institute, SDI, and tell them we sent you here from LLP.
That's right.
All right. Yeah, I guess we're going to dive into some questions, buddy.
Yeah, let's do it. And just for future reference, it doesn't always have to be limited to, firearms or self-reliance. Those are all great subjects and questions, but we're also small business owners. So if you guys have questions about, starting a small business, if you're interested, hey, I've always wanted to start a business. What are your guys' take on it? We have hit pitfalls as well. So maybe we can help you avoid some of the pitfalls that we ran into, while we were running businesses as well.
Well, I think you might be surprised at the line of questioning.
Well, I'm excited.
Yeah, I have preemptively looked through a few of the questions.
Oh, you screened them.
Yeah. But we are gonna just sort of go in line here. So, all right. Our first question comes from Raphael, the Tsar of Frank Arsenal. That's his Twitter name.
Yes, bizarre.
That is very bizarre, but he does have a question. What do you think the best Micro 9 is on the market right now? The CSX looks amazing, but is it the best? Okay, so, Smith & Wesson has their new CSX, and that's a great question. So I know, a lot of people will tend to kind of look at the newest and greatest hotness and sort of use that as a comparative, data point or whatever, and that's good and fine. It's no mystery that micro pistols are the new hotness on the market in general, right? You look at the SIG P365, you look at the Smith & Wesson Shield Plus, the Smith & Wesson CSX. Some of the Carr and Kimber offerings have always been pretty small. You've got some of the early Diamondback pistols that were pretty tiny, like their DB9.
Even the Bull Armory 1911s, like they're getting much smaller now. So you do see some really, really small micro 1911s coming out.
That's right. I mean, there's a ton of options out there, and it can be really confusing to the end consumer. I mean, like the Springfield Hellcat.
Yeah, the Hellcat.
The Glock 42, 43.
Which Glock was it that was in 357? Wasn't there a Glock micro that was before the 43?
Well, they did a 380, and then they came out with a single stack 9mm.
Yeah.
Okay. That might merit some further research later. But the point is, he's asking what the best Micro 9 on the market is right now. I mean, look, that's kind of a subjective thing. I mean, it's going to be different for everybody in terms of like what they want in a gun, right? So, certain guns might have features that you view as being much more, desirable than others, right? Me personally, I like the really slim size of the P365. And let's face it, SIG was kind of first to the plate on that, and they knocked it out of the park. Now, some of the early P365s had some primer drag issues. And
yes, very, very notably
had a few issues. But they've since worked through those, and honestly, my P365 is one of my favorite guns. I have an XL and two standards. My wife carries a standard. I carry an XL, and I love them. I think they're fantastic guns. Now, with that being said, we did a video recently on the Shield Plus. Man, fantastic gun. It's accurate, got good sights, very comfortable, very slim and easy to carry. Is it going to be ditching my P365? Probably not, but that's just my opinion, of course. I do love the standard single stack shield. I do love the Glock 43. I mean, they're great guns. I wasn't really impressed with the Springfield Hellcat. Not to say it's not a great gun. It's just not the gun for me, but you might like it. And I haven't had a chance to shoot the CSX yet.
You know, I think the Hellcat was late to the party. You know, they were probably notably the last micro to make it to the party. And it got mixed reviews.
I mean, the double stack shield didn't come out till after the Hellcat.
That was the Shield Plus. So, but the original Shield and the Shield 2.0, I used to carry a 2.0. That was my EDC, and I absolutely loved it. And the reason I loved it was, one, it's just very comfortable. Like it's single stack, very comfortable, very thin. I used to have to wear like more of your office professional wear, and I could actually wear that appendix, tuck my shirt in, have my blazer over it, and it was perfectly comfortable. Very small package. It was snappy like all micros are because they're just inherently, there's less mass there to absorb that recoil impulse. I like the Smith & Wesson like Shield series of pistols. The CSX, I haven't shot it yet. Aesthetically, not going to win a beauty contest. It's not a very, cool looking pistol. As far as any type of new technology, again, I'm not too familiar with it, but from what I saw in like the leaks and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm a Shield kind of guy. But with that said, I actually carry a larger pistol, EDC. I switched from the Shield 2.0 to a Zev OC9C, so I'm carrying the equivalent of a Glock 19.
That's right.
But to me, it's I'm not having to worry about comfort anymore. So I'm carrying
That's right.
The compact.
We know there's something to be said about just the good, tried and true nature of a good old Glock 19 as a sidearm. I mean, and arguably, if you don't want to go the micro route, I mean, a 19-sized pistol and a striker fire Glock fed configuration is a hard thing to beat. My vote on a micro is for the P365, and I would say follow closely by the Shield Plus.
Yep. I will vote for the Shield 2.0 or the Shield Plus. I can't say Shield Plus because I haven't shot it yet. So
fair enough.
Yep.
All right, so we have a lot of questions to go through. We're going to try to get to as many of them as we can, and we'll try to pick up the pace and kind of go through these pretty quickly, but still try to give you a good answer. I mean, we want to make sure we're giving you guys a good, well thought out answer here. Okay, Banker Brady on Twitter asks, does the average shooter practicing at the range monthly need to worry about their carry wearing out? I mean, their carry pistol. If so, what time frame before looking at replacement parts? Good question.
We actually have a really good example of this.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
I would say, I don't shoot as much as you would say, like what you see in videos, like going to the range all the time. I probably make it to the range once a month. I don't think that warrants me having to replace parts with probably in the next 5 years or so. I don't think that you have to worry about that. Like the average shooter is not going to the range and dumping so much ammo at a range session that you're going to have to worry about respringing your gun or anything like that.
I think that what it comes down to, Brady, to answer your question, just from a little bit of my experience, I mean, I've got access to a lot of different handguns, and I've shot a heck of a lot of different guns over the years, and I've carried quite a few different guns. And I will say that, it takes a heck of a long time to wear out springs in a gun. I think that, the firearm is always going to kind of give you hints as to what is going on, right? So let's say that you're running your pistol and everything's running tip-top, and you've taken it out, 10 or 12 times or 15 times, or you've trained with it 30 days out of the year, or however much you get out and actually shoot with it, the gun will begin to let you know if there's going to be some potential issues. All right, let's say you start getting some light strikes when you're out at the range. something that the gun hasn't been doing all along. Let's say it's had a really good proven track record, but all of a sudden you're getting light primer strikes. Maybe the magazine's not feeding quite so well. Perhaps it's not going into battery quite in the way that it really should be.
Failure to eject.
Might be time to look at a fresh recoil spring. Might be time to look at fresh hammer springs and striker springs and whatnot. Might be time to buy some new mags. There are rebuild kits for your magazines that you can respring your mags. So that might be an option for some of you. Really, the gun will begin to kind of let you know what is going on. Now, for the average passerby, as Matt said, the average guy that's going to buy a gun and maybe you don't have the opportunity to do quite as much training as you'd like to, I would say round count, you'd probably have to get in the neighborhood of 3 to 4, maybe even 5,000 rounds on certain autos before you start to see those types of issues. I mean, most guns can last a pretty long time without having to be resprung, but that is an astute observation because it is important to realize that any tool can and will wear out with enough use and enough time. So that's a great question to pose. Hey, do I need to worry about replacement parts for my EDC? I mean, a lot of your mainstream firearms manufacturers, if you go through some of the parts suppliers, you can actually pick up like OOPS kits and parts kits, and they'll put together kits that are just like the most tried and true things that tend to go and wear out on given firearms. And you can always just have some extra springs and things and maybe an extra guide rod assembly, an extra striker or firing pin, and have all that stuff on hand. And that way, if you do have problems, you can just swap it out. And especially on something like a Glock, they're super easy to swap out by yourself. So that's a great question.
To add on to that, you should also probably look at not focus so much on replacing the parts, but looking at your carry ammo and rotating that out, because that's things a lot of people don't do is they unload their carry ammo into, like, when I go to the range, I'll take my hat off, I'll like dump my carry ammo, and then I'll load up my ball. And if you keep rechambering that round, you're going to get set back. And people have a tendency not to shoot their more expensive defensive ammo.
Sure.
Just let it fly and reload it and refill the coffers and be done with it. Don't worry. You don't want too much setback. That can cause some issues there.
Good point. Yeah. I will add this too when it comes to like your carry gun wearing out, is that generally if you start to have some kind of a weird feeding problem or, I would suspect the magazine first beyond anything else before you start messing with springs. Start with the magazine and work your way up, because a lot of times, if people are training a lot and you're dropping your mags left and right all over the place, those feed lips can get dinged up or they can get bent a little bit. And sometimes it's just like the feeding lip geometry's gotten a little jacked up from being dropped a lot, or the spring is wore out in the magazine. That's probably going to be your likely culprit you probably want to look at first.
And the example that we talked about was we acquired a beautiful para-ordnance double action only 45, and we have to respring the gun and make sure everything, because it's an older firearm, but you have to go through and replace some of those springs.
I think the issues we're having out of that gun are magazine related. So maybe Chad and I will do a video on going through and diagnosing that pistol. So stay tuned for that if we get to it. All right, we've got a lot of questions to cover.
Hey, let's go.
All right, Major Melancholy on Instagram, Life Extraneous. I'm 38 and I've never been hunting. What is a good way to start? Like finding a hunting buddy to show me the ropes. Questions for good/safe ways to get started. Excellent question.
Man. And good for you for wanting to get out there and do it, man. Like that's awesome.
I think that the best person to handle that question is probably Matt, because look, here's the thing. Matt, you've been around guns your whole life, and I know you've been a gun guy for a long time, but you've only recently gotten into hunting.
That's right.
And look, and let's be fair, right? Not all of us are exposed to hunting at a young age, and some of us have this curiosity with it. Maybe our grandpa used to go hunting all the time, but for whatever reason, maybe we never got exposed to it. I mean, there's any reason that you might not have been exposed to hunting. Maybe you were from some anti-gun family that was super opposed to hunting, and they just never got exposed to it. And some of us don't get into hunting until later in life. And one of our previous podcast episodes, we actually discussed a hunt that we took Shermichael and John on from Guns Out TV, and they are in their 30s, and this is their first time hunting as well. So you're in a very similar boat.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually start hunting four-legged game till about 2 years ago. Was it last season or two seasons? I forget. It's relatively recently.
A couple of years now.
Yeah.
We've been hunting together.
And Eric invited me out. I had never been hunting. He kind of took me out. He let me borrow one of his deer rifles because I only had 5.56.
That's for the two-legged.
Yeah,
game.
it's for the two-legged game. And it does take getting a little used to. He kind of taught me the ins and outs and the ropes. But what really got me comfortable, if I wouldn't have had Eric to show me the ropes, was the hunter safety course, actually. And it's pretty boring, but it really gets you comfortable with shot placement, navigating the world of public land, because more than likely, if you've never hunted before and you're trying to get out there and hunt, you're going to be hunting on public land. And the great thing about that is that when you're hunting, you can hunt solo. You go out there, no one's there to, make fun of you or like do anything. Like it's just you, your orange vest, and, hundreds of acres, thousands of acres of public land. If you get a deer, great. You can throw the animal in the back of the truck or whatever vehicle you have, take it down to the processor, get them to process it out the way that you want it to. But the first step is I would recommend taking the hunter safety course, mainly because, one, it shows you the proper and ethical way to harvest a deer. There's a lot of ways you can kill a deer that it's going to ruin the meat. So I would recommend that as the first step is taking that course.
That's right. That's good advice. And I would say, finding an experienced hunter that you can kind of have them, put you under their wing a little bit. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that is, mutually exclusive to, becoming a good hunter later in life, but I will say that a lot of my exploits in terms of predator hunting and some more of the nighttime type of hunting where you're kind of doing spot and stalk with thermals and things and sneaking around and shooting stuff at night, which is arguably a bunch of fun.
Very fun.
It does sort of take an ambassador to kind of like show you the ropes a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with just finding a buddy and getting them to show you a few things. And I think you'll find too, if you're later in life and you're wanting to get into hunting, there are so many people that would love nothing more than to expose you to that world, because many people are the ambassadors to the Second Amendment as well as the ambassadors to the hunting world. Okay, so great question. All right, Thanks for that question, Major Melancholy, or whatever that is. All right, Shed Owl asks, okay, what is your assessment on the differences in hunting calibers per region, such as Colorado and Utah versus hunting in your neck of the woods, and how there's a firearms culture in itself, and how there's a firearms culture in itself? Okay, so if I'm reading this question right, Matt, what Shed Owl is getting at is that each of the hunting disciplines almost has like their own little, kind of group of people that are like super enthusiastic about it. Like, okay, if you go out to moose country or elk country, those elk hunters, like they're super, super, in tune with the land and the animals and the movement and how to draw the tags and go out in these areas and hike in. I mean, it's a different environment, like versus being here in Georgia, and our type of hunting is very different. Now, those guys could come down here and have a great time and probably do just fine. Now, if we went up and went on a moose hunt for the first time, we'd probably be getting smoked because you're having to hike in a long way. You got to be in really good physical shape.
Elevation
Plus the
changes.
Air is different. The elevation change. So it is a different world, for those styles of hunting, for sure.
It is, and I guess if I'm looking into it, you said different regions with different cartridges. I mean, you're right. There are different areas like, Indiana or Iowa. They only allow straight wall cartridges. So you're using different types of rifles. You're not going to see really too much AR hunting in those regions versus here in the South. AR hunting is normal. You take an AR out, whether it's an AR-10 or AR-15. I guess what you're really trying to ask is, there's hunters out there that are like the brown rifle hunters that use like your traditional wood stock, like FUD type hunters. And then you have your younger generation of hunters that are going out there with like full camo, like ARs, like magazines, like everything. And, hunting is hunting. And really all that matters is that you're getting out there, you're harvesting the game, you're doing it for the right reasons. And like you said, when you go out, it is different types of hunting, And the great thing is you can take a hunter from Georgia, take us out to the Midwest, and we're going to go on a spot and stalk, mule deer or elk hunt, and we will have an absolute blast.
Oh, yeah.
Consequently, you can also take a hunter from the Midwest, place them in a 600-acre parcel in South Georgia, and they're just going to have a blast as well, because hunting is hunting, and you enjoy the hunt, the thrill of the chase, and that chase is just because you're hunting a different way. It's still harvesting game, and at the end of the day, you have a cooler full of meat.
That's true, and I think that there are some differences in the type of tech, and especially calibers. To more specifically go back to the calibers on this question, as a hunter in Georgia who's only hunting a 100-yard deer plot, are they going to run a 7 mag or a 300 Winchester Magnum or a 300 Ultra Magnum? Probably not. That's kind of heavy medicine for just a 100-yard shot on a whitetail. Now, granted, is a guy that's trying to go kill a giant moose or something going to use a 300 Win Mag with a super heavy bullet? Yeah. So it all comes down to different needs of different hunters, and I think there is a little bit of bleed over. I mean, sure, a hunter from up north or out in the Midwest that does a lot of coyote hunting or whatever type of hunting where they're trying to shoot long range with a big heavy pill, you can still bring that gun to South Georgia and do good work. I mean, it's just there's a little bit of crossover there for sure.
And look what we can do. You can also change it up. Like we went from hunting with rifles to hunting with handguns. I told you next season I'm probably going to try another, pistol caliber Magnum like rifle. Like you can always switch it up and have fun with it.
Yeah. Right now, Mark Novak is going to be producing a stock for my X-Frame 500 Magnum. We're going to be SBR in my 500 Magnum.
Yeah, buddy.
So stay tuned for that. And I'm not going to give away too many details, but let's just say it's going to be amazing. And it'll be something, it'll be one of a kind for sure.
Put a nice custom brake on it. It's like spitting fireballs out.
All right. So Vin3901 on Twitter asks, what's a good choice for a budget hunting / multi-use scope that is lightweight and has good tracking and illuminated MRAD reticle for around $1,000 or less, sub $1,000. Wow, that's a tall order.
It is.
Wow. So I would say probably look at the Arkans. Okay, I would say look at some of the Primary Arms offerings, which are amazing. Now, if you want going for that straight up MRAD style, I mean, if you're looking for a Christmas tree reticle, right? Totally, the Arkin would be a way to go on that, and the PAs. Now, Dimitri's reticles over at Primary Arms, his reticles are very, very specifically tailored and quite geniusly made, in my opinion. I mean, he is really good at figuring out the math, but so are the engineers at Arkin. I mean, they do such a great job at designing their reticles, and I love the tactile adjustments on the Arkin, and best of all, those Arkins are very, very well, comfortably south of $1,000. And their illuminated reticle.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've shot loophole. I mean, from a hunting aspect, was the question about hunting optics, or was it just about optics in general?
Hunting optics that are budget, that are light. Well, it says has to be lightweight, good tracking with illuminated MRAD reticle.
Lightweight is relative to your actual muscle mass. So let's get that out of the way. Some guys, if you're yoked and you're like 240 and you're like ripping doors off hinges, everything is light. Okay, so
yeah. To be fair, the Arkans are a little on the hefty side,
so
but they are a great option for the money.
Yeah, but I agree. I think Arkin's a great choice. It's like $459 for a 6-24, which is heavy medicine for deer hunting. They make a 4-16, which is like $100 less. Dude, I hunt with that, and it 100% success rate, 100% kill rate with that optic, with that rifle. So, and I think the longest shot I took this season was like 165, 170 yards, and it didn't let me down. Loophole makes a great optic. You're not going to get an illuminated reticle for sub 1,000 at Loophole, not that I know of. I know they have some of their gold or V3i golds or something. To my knowledge, they don't have a illuminated reticle for sub 1,000.
Leupold has a couple of optics that they make that have their fire dot reticle in it, which is, so it's basically just it's like a little rubberized plunger that you press in on the side of the cap that has the battery in it, and it will turn on the reticle. So there are illuminated reticle. Now, you're not going to get like some crazy Christmas tree reticle. So if you're looking for something like an H59 or something that has the tracking capability in terms of all of the different tactical milling reticles that are out there, you're certainly not going to get into a tactical milling reticle that's illuminated for under $1,000 at Leupold. But you can get into the VX3s, gold rings, like just the, great gold ring standard optics with the fire dot reticles. Most of them will be duplex, pigplex, or I think they have a duplex hunter that's got a real basic graduated, reticle in it, but they're not going to be quite the same functionality as a Christmas tree reticle. So it's a bit of a trade-off, but you can find those for south of $1,000 for sure.
With the duplex reticle, by the way.
They're going to be basic reticles.
Your standard crosshairs.
Great optics, though. Yep. I love them. All right, we're going to move on to the next question. Preston Ragsdale asks, what are your favorite pre-1900 handguns and long guns?
Ooh. Oh, wow. Ooh, okay.
I see you're a man after my own heart, Preston. Wow. I mean, you're touching all the right areas. I love vintage firearms.
Well, that would be you and you alone.
Propane and propane accessories.
That is not my wheelhouse, so that will be an Eric question.
All right. I have to say, look, I'll keep this one super brief because I don't want to, leave Matt out of this conversation. I know he's not quite as much into the vintage stuff as I am, but I clearly am.
Yes, I am not a man of vintage taste.
One of my favorite long guns that is before 1900 happens to be on the wall behind me here, and this is my Norwegian Kammerlader. All right, this is a 1857 Norwegian Kammerlader in the original, big bore. It's like a 69 caliber. It shoots this kind of weird looking like ballistic marshmallow bullet that looks kind of like a giant air gun projectile. And I have killed so many animals with that gun. And there's people out there that would go, well, why are you using that to deer hunt? Because they are very rare and extremely valuable. Like I'm talking, they're probably worth like $5,000-6,000. So there's people like, what? You're doing what? But I love this rifle, and it's one of my favorite pre-1900s, and especially in terms of black powder. Now, in terms of smokeless, I have to say I probably prefer my old school Argentine Mauser, my 1891 Argentine Mauser. That's just before the turn of the century. But, man, the Argentine Mausers are beautiful. I love them. Enough said there. You can't go wrong with the old Mauser. In terms of handguns, anything before 1900, dude, it's really hard to not love the Mauser broom handle. I have to say, in terms of old school gun designs, and oddly enough, there's one right there on the back, the back wall. I love the Mauser broom handle. I love the Luger. They are fantastic guns. I love the Brochart. I mean, there's so many cool old school guns, man. I love the Steyr Hahn. I mean, there's just, man, I could go on about this subject all day, but we'll move on. Thanks for the question, Preston.
Great question.
Yeah. Give me a broom handle and an old school Argentine Mauser, and I'm happy. Okay. All right. We have a little bit of construction going on in the studio, so if you hear a little bit of noise in the background, I very much apologize, but we are in a working environment here. Okay. So I apologize in advance. Kevin, KW Jones 001 on Twitter asks, if you had a garden, what would you be growing? Also, if you wanted to raise your own protein, what animals would you choose? Wow, good choice.
That's a very good question.
That's a good question, Kevin. I should have read that one before I agreed to answer it. So you put me on the spot, Kevin. Wow. Okay, so I would say, now I don't want this answer to be super time-consuming because this is a very involved question that could really merit a 30-minute discussion. So we're going to give you the penny tour. Okay, we're going to give you some food for thought. Any superfoods, right? Like dinosaur kale, different kales are always great. Obviously, most of your staple crops, such as potatoes, corn, leeks, things like that do exceptionally well. They're easy to grow. They're really hardy. They're very proven. Things like tomatoes. If you have a greenhouse and you're wanting to do some other things that you can grow inside a greenhouse, microgreens are great. Anything in the superfood category, micro kales and small, microgreens have definitely their form and function in terms of nutritional value. Also, lots of your fair weather, like strawberries and things. Kale as a superfood is amazing. I would certainly try to grow kale. I'd probably try to grow kale over something like asparagus. I'd say kale's probably easier, and kale is super, super nutritious. And if you can get it taken off and doing well, the yield that you're going to get is fantastic. That's my opinion. All right, now that goes beyond, like, let's say harvesting your own mushrooms and inoculating mushroom logs, which we'll get to in a future video. Chad and I will be doing a complete manly meal video on inoculating your own mushroom logs. Also, we'll talk about raising bees at a later date. Having your own honey on site is awesome.
Yes.
All right. Now, livestock. What animals would you choose? That's a good question. I mean, chickens are easy.
Chickens are very easy.
Very easy. You can get some Rhode Island Reds, and that way you've got eggs, and they'll lay every day.
That's right.
Which is great. So if you like eggs, chickens are nice to have around. Of course, you can have chickens for meat as well, but personally, I think it's cooler to have chickens for, eggs.
Yeah. I mean, I'm completely with you. I think in those types of situations, you want something that doesn't require a ton of water. Asparagus is nice, but there's certain vegetables that require a ton of water, and that might not be something that you have on hand. Like, you might have water, but not enough to spare to keep watering these vegetables. So potatoes, corn, obviously staples, green beans, those are great to grow.
Sure.
Beets. I love more of the hardy rooted vegetables, turnips, stuff like that, because that kind of gives you a little bit more mass. You're getting a lot more substance out of that vegetable than, say, something smaller. You get more more bang for your buck.
The nice thing about root vegetables too, especially when you look at like potatoes, is that they can store for a ridiculously long time. So if you've got like a root cellar, you can harvest them bad boys, and as long as you keep them, reasonably cool and out of any kind of moisture or odd temperature or humidity swings, they'll keep a long time in root cellar.
Well, with me being, half Korean, I grew up in a Korean household. We learned to pickle vegetables, so all of those like turnips, radishes, all that stuff lends itself to being pickled very easily. And once you pickle it, you're good. It'll stay good for a very, very long time. As far as proteins go, chickens, very easy to maintain. You just have to keep them protected from like hawks and birds and stuff like that. We do have a ton of hawks here in Georgia that'll just pick them right up. And then I would probably opt for like goats or rams, just because goats will also, you don't really have to take care of them as far as feeding goes. They'll graze on the land and all that good stuff. And they'll
also keep stuff away from your chickens.
They will. They're very protective, but they're also good protein. So you can eat them.
Yep. And hogs obviously are definitely worth the effort. I mean, if you've got a good area on your property with lots of water, or if they have to have a lot of water, they got to have a cool spot, they got to have a muddy area to lay down, because pigs don't have sweat glands, so they have to get down and root around in that water and roll around to cool their body off. So those are things to consider. But hogs, obviously, those are definitely, they breed super fast,
Pork
they
chops.
grow fast, and you can feed them just about anything. All right. Next question.
Good question,
comes from, that was a great question. Kevin, thank you for the question. All right, our next question comes from Anthony Hegler. Okay, Anthony Hegler, Anthony Hegler on Twitter. He says, what are something you should have as a new hunter? So we kind of discussed a little bit about like how someone old and later stage of life wants to get into hunting, what kind of things they might want to consider. All right, what's some of the equipment maybe a new hunter should have? Matt, I'm going to let you take this question.
Oh, yeah. So I learned very quickly there's a couple of things that you need. One is if you're doing like deer hunting, you need some cold weather gear. So you definitely need that. But if you're just looking for like accessories, I recommend a tripod, hog saddle. This is outside of the rifle because I'm assuming you already have a rifle. Hog saddle, tripod, or shooting sticks or monopod, something that you can rest that gun on, because not all of your blinds or stands are going to have the ability for you to rest your rifle on. Range finders, or another way to spot your game without looking through your optics. So if you don't have to keep raising your rifle up to look through the optics, you can kind of do it with either your range finder or some binos. Obviously your blaze orange, you need that. As much as we don't like it, if you're hunting on public land, you absolutely have to have that. That's one of the reasons I don't hunt public land, is because I don't like getting shot at. So you need blaze orange if you're doing public land.
So friends with land, that's important.
Friends with land, you need friends with land as well. First aid kits, because you never know if you're out there by yourself. Accidents happen. That's a good chest rig. You do need a good chest rig, so you're not reaching down. These are things you learn when you're there. If you're sitting in a blind or in a tree stand, movement is life. So the less you move, the better. So if you have everything mounted up on your chest on like a chest rig, which Eric conveniently purchased for me as a Christmas gift last year, lifesaver. You can basically do small movements. Everything comes in. Binos are in there. Rangefinders in there. You're not reaching around in your pockets trying to find everything. So those are definitely things you can look at.
Those tip pouches are from Hill People Gear.
Excellent.
And
excellent
I strongly recommend it. It's a really great piece of gear. They're not the cheapest thing in the world, but I tell you, they're a really fantastic piece of equipment. And you can put your wallet, your keys, your phone, all your junk in there. I'd recommend the little wind bottles, too, for checking the wind.
Yes.
It's like almost like a little talcum or baby powder that's in a little bottle, and you squeeze in the air, and it'll help you read the wind, and that's a crucial thing for deer hunting or any type of hunting, really, because any animal is going to live and die by its nose.
Yep.
So being able to assess the wind. Also, I'd recommend scent sprays. So there's lots of scent sprays that you can spray your clothing down with. You got to control that scent.
Number one rule.
A wind bottle and scent spray, those are two things that aren't very expensive but can go a long way in helping you out. And, of course, whatever rifle you're going to run, that's probably a different topic altogether. But, yeah, that's a great question, Anthony. Thanks for the question. I'm going to skip some of these questions because some of them I'm not prepared to answer. I'm just going to be honest with you, okay? So I'm not trying to skirt the question, but I'm just not prepared to answer some of these. If it's something that I don't feel knowledgeable enough to answer, I'm not even going to go there.
And that's a smart move. You know,
Yep.
you have to know what you're talking about.
That's right. Okay, what is the best 223/556 for self-defense inside your house or building? In other words, what's the safest rifle ammo to use indoors in case you miss or over-penetrate?
Aim small, miss small. Don't miss.
Interesting. Okay. Well, it's a valid concern.
It is.
It's a valid concern.
It is.
You know, there are lots of different types of ammo out there. I know what I use and I know what I prefer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be the right situation that's going to work for you in every single different environment. Everyone's needs are different, right? Everyone lives in different places. If you live in a apartment complex, you got a bunch of neighbors that could be above you, below you, beside you. I mean, a close-in environment becomes a very dynamic and dangerous environment because you have a responsibility to not only protect your life and end the threat, but not to harm anyone else in the process. I mean, every bullet that leaves the end of your barrel has a lawyer attached to it, right? I mean, that's what we've always been taught. That's what we always, the mantra we teach. Now, is it to say that we should fall back on one specific ammo and say, well, this, I don't have to be responsible anymore? I think the answer to that is no. We shouldn't assume that, all right, well, this is a frangible bullet or it's designed this way or that way, and that gives me the automatic ability to say, all right, well, I don't have to worry about being careful. We should always strive to be very, very careful in those situations, okay? Always own every shot, and it's easy to get wrapped up in the heat of the moment and just indiscriminately, not that you should indiscriminately shoot, but it's easy to just get wrapped up in the combat fog, right? So I know what round I use, all right? So the Federal has their FBI load. It's a 62 grain bonded bear claw bullet, and it's the load that Federal designed for the FBI. That's what I use. Now, it is the exact opposite of the round you probably should use inside a house, but where we live, I ain't got to worry about it.
That's right.
And I'm launching those. And then also the M855A1, which is a very difficult round to get. Yeah. But in the belt fed here in the house, I run 100 round belt to M855A1 and a machine gun.
It's so
true.
in
case things get squirrely, there's 100 of those going down range. Now, that may not be everybody's situation. I mean, I'm probably an outlier. I'm
You're probably
exception.
like the only person that runs a belt fed for home defense.
Look, I'm the exception, not the rule. Now, I will say this. If you are looking for something that might not penetrate as much, let's just say in drywall, insulation, studs and things like that, some of the frangible offerings might be worth looking into. Mm-hmm. I would look at some of the Fort Scott munitions. Those particular bullets do exceptionally well. We've done a lot of penetration testing, and in soft targets, they do quite well, and they will tend to fall a little bit more short in some of the harder barriers. So that might be something worth looking into for some of you. That's a great question. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, definitely look at frangible ammo if that's what your goal is. But just know that it is a completely different animal than shooting at someone a hard target with armor on, because it's like gonna be like throwing spitballs at them. It's gonna break up and not gonna do what you want it to do.
I mean, I hate to admit it, but like for me, like I don't care about being fair, right? If someone's trying to hurt me, they don't get the benefit of getting the one up on me, right? Like I want to have every advantage I can over someone who's trying to hurt my family. So maybe I look at things a little bit differently, but like, I mean, there is no quarter when someone's in the doorstep.
But your situation is a bit different, though. You do live out in a rural area. You don't have to worry about neighbors. You can basically send it in any direction that you want to. I think this person's question, he probably lives more in a built-up area. He is concerned about his neighbors, apartment mates, and whatnot. So
maybe a shotgun.
Shotgun with just no slugs. So shotgun would probably do best in a built-up area.
Maybe a shotgun with number 4 buckshot would be a little bit better of a choice than a full-on AR. Now, all right, to go down to which AR, I mean, like the Daniel Defense Mark 18, sweet piece of gear. That question came from Subdermal13, and that's Tattoos by John on Twitter. Thanks for the question.
And John, if you only have a 223, because I don't want to say shotgun when you don't own a shotgun, because your question was specifically for 223, which leads me to believe that that's the only gun that you have. Just go get some frangible ammo and just make sure that that is your house gun and not like your truck gun or anything like that.
So just to mirror your question, John. All right. Clown World Refugee on Twitter, and that's Clown World Doggo on Twitter, asks, want you to recommend a good home shooting range setup if you live in a rural area. Now, his question is not necessarily related to using a firearm for self-defense in the home, but more to setting up a range if you have maybe enough space in your yard to merit doing it in a rural area. We recently set up another pistol range at my place here. I would push up as freakishly large of a berm as you can stand to do. If you've got a bunch of trees to push over in your property and you want to bury a giant mound of trees or bring in a huge load of fill dirt, whatever the protocol or specifications are for the size of that berm for your area, you need to meet or exceed it by 2/3 or more, if not double or even triple, right? So I'm not going to just spout these numbers off the top of my head because I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but Georgia has very specific specifications for how big a recreational shooting berm on property is supposed to be, the width of the base at the bottom, the height of the berm, so on and so forth. I would always make sure that you are putting up the absolute largest mound of dirt you can deal with. You know, if you can go bigger, do it, because you got to deal with erosion. You know, the rain, the weather will help it erode. And then also as you shoot into it, you'll cause it to erode a bit. So I would always go much larger, and wider is never going to be an issue. Always go larger and wider than you think you're going to need for sure.
And then throw some seed on there so that grass grows in. Those roots hold that dirt down. So you don't, that kind of lessens the erosion aspect of it.
Make sure you're buying good steel. Don't buy subpar steel. You know, there's a lot of people on like Facebook Marketplace or, you know, those type of local markets. So, oh, yeah, I got some shooting steel for sale. And you hit it with, you know, any decent rifle cartridge and you get these pits or divots in it. Make sure you run a good AR-500 or AR-550 grade shooting steel that can handle the round that you're throwing at it. Also understand the angles you're shooting steel with. And with certain velocity bullets, you want to make sure you're not getting weird ricochets and things. So make sure that you're shooting your steel face on. Don't ever have a piece of steel facing at an angle so that the bullet can't ricochet off. So you want to make sure you're shooting your steel face on and make sure that the steel is the distances that the manufacturer recommends for the gun that you're using and the cartridge that you're using. And just follow those basic steps. You'll be just fine and get to having fun in no time on your own property. All right, thanks for that question. Okay, Mean Median, Caulk Sticky on Twitter says, what do you think about the BR-180? And he's referring to the BRN-180. They're fantastic. All right. You know what he's talking about, right?
Yeah, the Brownells BRN-180s.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really, really cool guns. Like they're very, very unique. It's like a really good way to scratch an AR itch without it being an AR. So you show up to the range with one of those, and it just looks really cool. It's got the little charging handle on the right hand side. The operating system's a little quirky. I like the weapon system in general. The accuracy probably isn't the best that you're going to get out of it. I mean, the one that I shot wasn't the most accurate. You're talking, 1.5, 2 minute gun.
They do a couple of different versions of the BRN-180. They do their pistol length uppers, rifle length uppers. I've shot both. The one that Matt is holding right here is a 300 Blackout. All right, so this one's really cool. It's set up with a side-folding pistol brace, so it's a nice compact setup. And believe it or not, this is the only 300 Blackout I own is this BRN 180, and they're neat. It's kind of a take on the old AR-18.
Yeah.
And, it was a different kind of thing. It was a different vibe. The 180 and the 18 series, it didn't quite catch on in the way that it really needed to. But I think what Brownells has done with this series of guns is cool because they're bringing back the old school stuff, right? Yep. And if you'd use the Brownells lowers and buy the 180 stock kits, they do have some stock options, not the Wall Street stock options, but the literal gun stock options that are very close to the original AR-18 series, which is really cool. I think they're awesome, and I do have a 16-inch version of this gun. I've got the Gen 2 model that has the adjustable gas system, and they suppress really well. And sure, I think accuracy-wise on the 5.56, maybe about a minute and a half gun, possibly 2 minutes with certain ball ammo. But man, I've shot them out to 500-600 yards. They work quite well. I mean, can't really say I've had too many issues out of them. It's
definitely a minute of man gun, but it gets the job done. And I think that if you were, in a SHTF situation and that's what you had, and you had to hit some target at 500 yards with that, you could do it, no problem.
Well, they're definitely more accurate than most bullpups.
Absolutely.
And the inherent accuracy potential of the original guns is probably on par with that anyway.
What I think makes it really cool is that Brownells had to actually go in and remake the tools required to make certain parts of this gun, because they just didn't make them anymore. Nobody was manufacturing them. So it's a really cool concept. Operations-wise, it's awesome. Just a retro feel. It has a really cool retro feel. If you're looking for that retro rifle, BRN 180 all day.
100%. They are neat. And it is interesting to just note that, the stuff that Brownells is doing with, their retro series, I know some of them have been kind of hard to get because there's been a lot of supply issues. I mean, it goes without saying that the supply issues are there, and it's not just gun industry. It's many, many, many different industries, right? So some of their guns have been a little bit hard to get, but man, the retro series, all of the stuff they do, they held up pretty well. I've been pretty happy with them. All right, let's see here.
It is a beautiful gun.
It is. Okay. Wow. There's some great questions. All right, you're gonna like this one. This is gonna be a tough question. Okay, Simfer Alpha on Twitter asked, what things would you consider if you were asked to be harder to kill every day? Defense, mental, physical, health, etc. in totality. There is a business model there. Wow. What a great question. How to be harder to kill, and what should one look at to be harder to kill? Wow. I mean, do we have another hour? Hang on. Look, no, we don't have an hour. We have 10 minutes left. Wow. I mean, we could really go down the rabbit hole on that question, but I mean, where should we start there?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that you have two choices in life. You can live your life and be happy and have friends and be social and be somewhat vigilant and hard to kill, or you can choose to be hard to kill and be antisocial, a hermit, and not go out and not do anything, because those are the two extremes. If you truly want to be hard to kill, then you have to separate yourself from everybody. You can't be around people, because how can you be killed if there's nobody around you, or you're kind of pushing everybody away and they don't want to be around you? I think you have to come to terms with being killable. And once you accept that everybody can be killed, it's very easy. Think about what you do in a day. you're walking around, you're either at work or you're driving your car, you can be killed by anybody at any time, whether you want to or not. You can only be so vigilant. So to me, what would be things that you can do to be harder to kill? Be healthy. You can work out, you can train with your firearm to your own extent, like make sure you know how to use it. But for me, just accept the fact that you're a meat puppet and you're just a person full of blood and guts and organs that can die at any minute,
That's a very astute observation.
Coming to terms with the fact that you're going to die eventually.
I think what Matt said is very thought-provoking. And look, you can't claim to just cover this subject in just a short little answer. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, right? And I agree, you talk about a business model. Yeah, of course. I mean, there are many people that are in the business of making you harder to kill.
We know most of trainers.
Oh, yeah. There's tons of trainers out there that do a great job of giving you the necessary tools. I would say beyond everything, situational awareness is everything.
Yep.
Right? And everyone always wants to assume, okay? Everyone wants to assume that you are going to be involved in some John Wick style gunfight, but the truth of the matter is you stand a much greater chance of ending your life by getting in a car accident or getting injured somehow or slipping and falling or any of these other non-interesting ways that, it's just, let's face it, the world's dangerous, right?
Drunk driver T-bones you.
Yeah, I mean, the general situational awareness of surviving life doesn't necessarily have to even be gun-related. Right, like we assume that we're going to get in some gunfight, but really there are many things that can kill us. Right, so at the end of the day, I think it's just if you have your wherewithal about you and you have the sort of mentality of being super alert and attentive and having the situational awareness and not being complacent in every situation you're in, even if it's an unassuming situation, you're instantly going to increase your survivability by a huge factor because, all right. What if I could just avoid getting into a disastrous or terrible situation to begin with? All right, what if I went to turn down some random alleyway in some city I'm not familiar with? And you get that gut feeling, maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe I should take a better route. Sometimes you have to just have that situational awareness and realize, what? This isn't somewhere I need to be, right? We all have those gut instincts, and I think we have to trust our gut instincts. So anyway, I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole in this question because there's a lot to unpack, but maybe that gives you some food for thought there. So thanks for that question. Okay. Chandler Papas, official, on Twitter, asks, because I'm curious what your answer would be, what is your plan for a completely self-reliant, renewable, and sustainable meat source? He said, mine is rabbits. Wow.
Well, the problem with
that a bit.
I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade, but if your single source of protein is rabbits, you'll need to add something with more fats to it because rabbit starvation is a real thing. You cannot sustain yourself off rabbits as your only source of protein just because it's so lean and there's no fat on it. So you will have to find some other form of fat to inject into that diet. Yeah, that would be my takeaway is you might have to rethink that.
Hogs.
Yeah. Well,
I think hogs,
you went from something with no fat to something that's like 90% fat.
Also, look, tilapia. Okay,
tilapia fish is, yeah.
Hear me out.
Whoa.
Sorry.
There you go.
Aquaponics, okay? Rabbit starvation is a thing. When you look at the Winter War 39 in Finland, a lot of the Finnish citizens there, of course, you can grow potatoes in like 55-gallon oil drums, which the Russians and the Finns were doing in that period of time. It was a very, unique and totally sustainable survival tactic. But a lot of the Finnish citizens on the frontier, especially in some of the really rural areas of Finland, they would raise rabbits. And you're correct in that rabbits do breed and reproduce and grow very quickly. So you would think, all right, cool, we'll just eat rabbits. That's an easy source of protein. Now, as Matt said, rabbit starvation is a thing. There's not enough complex carbohydrates in your diet. There's not enough fat. and you cannot survive strictly on a diet of rabbits. Now, that's a great way to supplement other proteins. Of course, you should totally look at raising rabbits for meat if that's something you want to do. Also, tilapia. Okay, tilapia reproduce really fast. They're very easy to grow. They are very easy to cultivate, and they taste wonderful. Tilapia is a great table fare in terms of fish. And with an aquaponic system, now this is a lot to unpack in the very short amount of time we have left, so I'm not going to spend a heck of a lot of time. I'm just going to generically tell you that a tilapia-based aquaponic system, especially if you have a greenhouse, is a great way to have some great sustainable protein that's really easy to raise. And if you combine that with rabbits, all right, now you're talking, because you can take the fish bones, you can do fish stocks and things. You can use some of the, rabbit bones. I'm sure you can do some broths out of those.
Yes.
But I would say something with a little bit more fat and substance. Hogs are certainly going to be a little more care, but hogs, pigs, if you will, your common pig, they do reproduce pretty quick, and they are relatively easy to take care of. You do have to feed them a bit, so you're going to have access to some scraps or some meals and things like that. But you can also, grow a decent amount of crops if you got enough land, and, can feed your pigs some of the stuff you produce locally. So there's a lot of options there. I think a multi-pronged approach to proteins is probably best if you've got a lot of room on your property to do it. Obviously, raising chickens, nice thing about having Rhode Island Reds, as we said earlier, you've got eggs. So between chickens, pigs, some rabbits, maybe if you're into aquaponics, some tilapia. I know that's a lot to unpack and a lot to mentally process, but you could be pretty well self-sufficient with not a ton of land at your disposal if you play your cards right, and if you're savvy, and if you're careful with your shopping, and keep your budget under control. You can do it for sure.
That's right. You can. You don't need a lot of land to be sufficient.
No,
you just need to know how to rotate your crops.
That's right.
So, but before you jump into your next question, there is a question from one of our viewers that emailed us, and I thought I wanted to do this one next, Eric, if that's okay.
Well, this will be the last one, so that's convenient.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This is a good one to unpack.
Go ahead.
And this came from Deborah M. And it says, subject of the email, okay, comma, now do some real life scenarios. And the email says, my son got me to listen to your videos / podcasts. I like them because it's an amusing glimpse into a foreign world. My repeated thought during the episode is, so that's adorable that they think people are actually allowed to own that type of gun, buy ammo online, or carry a firearm like that. Plate carrier? ? I'm a 5'3", non-obese female. Plate carriers and anything Coyote Brown have no place in my wardrobe. Still, the episodes are amusing, even though it's a typical 2A media, rural male, what we call sausage fest, behind your backs. Which is why we unilaterally roll our eyes, sigh, dismiss out of hand, and move on every time we see yet another YouTube about guns. It would be fun, really fun, to hear an episode from real world places like here, the south side of Chicago, or any urban environment. And I do not mean to have a cop on as a guest. I mean regular people who live day to day in this environment. Our self-defense needs are more a daily concern of being swarmed by mobs, sucker punched, stabbed, while walking down the sidewalk, getting caught in gang crossfire, and most of all, being carjacked by an 11-year-old. Wow. Worrying about being prepared to walk 5 miles in office attire doesn't really make the list. P.S. Keep it up. It's fun to listen to in a I can't believe people live that way. But seriously, 2A is not just for rural males, even though YouTube makes it seem that way. Thank you, Deborah M.
Wow, Deborah. All right, well, look. Thanks for reaching out. Okay,
Yes.
so look, you're not wrong. I get it. Look, this society has really created a very toxic and hostile environment for a lot of different people, right? And you're right. It is completely okay to acknowledge, right, that I get it. Everyone seems to think, well, someone that looks like me, they're going to draw certain conclusions about someone like me and think that I live a certain way. But let me explain something to you, Deborah. We say what we do and we put information out in the way we do because we legitimately do care about trying to make your life better. I know it may not seem like it. It may not, the media creates all these situations where they try to make it out like we're the bad guy and we're against X, Y, Z or whatever. But at the end of the day, you know what I care about the most, Deborah? I care about preserving life, right? So I may not always, I'm not going to claim to always have the answers to everybody's problems, right? But what I can agree on, or at least what I can try to convince you of, is that the tools required for that task are relatively universal, right? Now, the tactics we employ in our lives with these tools can vary greatly on where we live, right? So the solution for Joe Blow redneck out in the middle of Georgia might not be the same as a fit 5'3", in-shape female that lives on the south side of Chicago. I get that, right? I don't know what it's like to live in your shoes and to be in that world, right? I understand. But to say holistically that, let's just say the white guy, right, on YouTube, and I get it.
Like, rural male.
Right, the rural male, right, that, most of the times, like your gun tubers, I get it. Like we're rural white men, I understand. But understand that what we're trying to accomplish, we legitimately and wholly do want you to be happy and successful in your life and to be free and to have the best tools available to protect yourself. And I would encourage you to, buy a gun and learn how to use it, right? So understand that we're not trying to claim that we know what's best for everybody. We've never made that claim. We've never made that assumption. All we can do is try to be, forthcoming in the information and be inclusive in the information. So don't think that when we put out some video we're making or a podcast that we're making that we're only talking to people that look like us. Of course not. We want whoever is willing to come to the table and take the information to take what they can from it, right? So maybe only 75% of what I'm saying is relevant to you, but that's okay. Take that 75% and go in peace and do what you need to do. And look, the other 25% you might have to find in another place, and that's okay. But don't think that this content is not here to help you, even if you don't think it's helping you. Like, we're trying to reach out to everybody, and we want everyone to equally, share in the task of exercising the Second Amendment rights. I hope that's an adequate enough answer for you, Deborah. But beyond that, I don't know what else I can say to make you happy, other than I don't know what it feels to be you.
What I would say is, one, thank you for sending the email, and thank you for listening to the show. It means a lot to both Eric and I that, you enjoy the show and that your son enjoys the show. Being in Chicago is a challenge in and of itself. You don't have the same access to the things that we do here in Georgia. So at a regional level, we're talking about things that we have access to on a daily basis that would make you a felon in your state. So I get it. It's hard. What I would probably say is don't look at it like we're talking about something that you can't do. You can. It might take a little bit of work as far as changing legislation in your state. That would be the first step. If you want to have the same freedoms in Illinois that you have here in Georgia, it has to be done legislatively. So the first step would be to be a little bit more politically active and try to change that. There is absolutely no reason that a 5'3" female should be concerned about walking down the street because you can't defend yourself. You should have the same access to firearms to protect yourself and your family, your son, that everybody in America does. As far as plate carriers go, RMA does have a female cut plate coming out, I believe, here in the next month or two. They already told me about that. So keep an eye out for that. You don't have to get Coyote Brown. They actually have some really good ultra concealable ballistic vests you can wear under your shirt, under your clothes. You can't see it. It's soft armor. So those are some those are things you can wear in a non-permissive environment that can help you be safe. But let's just face the facts. If everybody if you had a firearm, you would be on the same level as a 6'3", 300-pound male. As it stands right now, you wouldn't stand a chance, no matter what you had. So I would say if you need some help with getting into legislation, starting legislation, send us another email. We'll do what we can to put you in contact with your local legislation. And, if we can get the ball rolling, we'd love to help, because anything that we can do to help, promote the Second Amendment, especially in Illinois, which has notoriously restrictive gun rights, we're all there. We're in to help.
And Deborah, I'll just end that question by saying, okay, you asked for examples. Well, you have the examples right in your backyard. I don't need to give you examples. I don't have to deal with that crap because we don't have those problems down here. So I hate to be blunt with you, but the fact of the matter is, all you got to do is just walk down the street and you'll see the reason you need to have armor and a gun where you live. I mean, quite frankly, that's the fact of the matter. Like, I hate that. Like, I wish that the world was just holistically a more peaceful place and you didn't have to worry about it. But the world's a scary place. And, what we do with this content, we really are trying to honestly and truthfully help the public at large in their quest to seek safety and security and happiness in their life. And I hope that you really do understand when I say that I care about the happiness of people in the South Side of Chicago. Like, I want you guys to be happy just as much as us. So, look, we're on the same team here, okay? But thanks for the question, Deborah, and I think it's a great question. You brought up good points, so we want to address those. So we have reached the end of today's podcast. Thank you guys on Twitter so much for all of the questions. Thank you, Deborah, for the question. That was a nice curveball. Good one. All right, and man, have a great week. It has been a fantastic week. Remember, every single week here, make sure you tune in to LLP. We're on all of the different podcast servers. Also here on YouTube on Iraq Veteran 8888. We have a video version of this that releases every Friday. So make sure you tune in each week for a new episode. We've got many, many cool things on the way. And if you like this Q&A segment, let me know. And maybe we'll do one of these episodes every single month if you're interested.
Absolutely. Works for me.
All right, guys, have a great week. Live in freedom. Be happy. Arm yourself. Don't be afraid of anything, right? Right. Speaking back to one of the earlier questions, you got to be the soldier in the room. Be the one in the room to that is large and in charge, right? And that comes with that presence and that security, the amount of confidence you have in your ability to secure your room that you happen to be in and to have the situational awareness. Do it. You can do it. Have yourselves a great week. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Life, Liberty, and Pursuit. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. You can support us over on Ballistic Inc. by picking yourself up some merch. And remember, guys, dangerous freedom. Have a good one.